Hi everyone, today I'm talking about my top 10 pleasant surprises when it comes to board games. So these are all games that I wasn't necessarily expecting much from. I was kind of expecting to get them to the table and pretty hastily move on from them. However, I thought these are all pretty damn good and at least much better than I was expecting. So I've ranked these in order from the kind of difference between what I was expecting and how good they actually were. So these aren't necessarily in order of my least favourite to my most favourite, but still, all pleasant surprises. Before I get started on the games, I want to give a shout out to the show's sponsor, Kienda.co.uk, who are my go-to online retailer here in the UK. And if you use my link in the show notes, you can get 5% off your first order. But without further ado, let's get on with the video. At number 10, I have Elements, which is a small box card game, and this is essentially a micro game because I think there's only 18 cards in the entire deck, and these cards range from value 1 all the way up to, I think it's value 6. And all you're going to do on your turn or throughout the game is play cards either in the middle of the table, which is this kind of target value you're aiming towards, a bit like a game of blackjack, but with a moving target. And the other option you can do is to play cards in front of yourself, with the aim of trying to be as close as you can to that target without going over. And there's some additional options you could do as well, such as discarding value 6s from your hand to try and thin out your deck to give you a bit more agency and to give you a bit more accuracy when trying to reach that target. But I love this tension and how delicately balanced this game is, and the trigger to end the round is all in your hands, because if you are content that you are in a better position than your opponent, you can call the round there and then, and if you are in the best position, you will score X amount of points. But if you incorrectly call it, you can give your opponents even more points. And then it's essentially a race to get to a target value of points. But I just love how simple the game is. Some of these rounds take about 30 seconds to play, but it is pretty damn tense. And it's almost like one of those like traditional card games that you could play in a pub or something. Very breezy, you can sit back and relax and enjoy the game, but there is still some tension there. And that balance is quite finely struck, and I do enjoy the game in its entirety. So it only takes about, again, 10 minutes to play, and I think it's a pretty damn good experience for that I really wasn't expecting much from. And yeah, very pleasantly surprised by Elements. At number 9, I have Favour of the Pharaoh by Tom Lehman. So Tom Lehman is generally known for his engine building style games such as Res Arcana, Race for the Galaxy, Roll for the Galaxy, and more recently Dice Realms. And Favour of the Pharaoh is actually another game that uses dice, but this uses dice in a more traditional sense, more in like a Yahtzee variant, as at the start of the game, you're going to start with a basic bunch of dice, you're going to roll them with the aim of trying to get, pairs or 3 of a kind, that kind of thing. And as you do this, you're going to start acquiring more dice and more mitigation tools, all with the aim of using these powers and dice to get to, I believe it's 7 of a kind. And it's going to be the first person who gets that 7 of a kind will be the winner. However, everybody else does get a chance to kind of trump that if they can. But I love the way that as the game goes on, you're getting more and more powers. There's limited options available to you, so you want to get them first to get the best ones. And every single time I've played this game, the end game has been extremely exciting. As somebody reaches that target, and then the next player betters it by just 1, and then the next player betters it again. So there really is that kind of ruckus tension and that real excitement at the end of the game. And you know what? I'm really impressed with the variety that the box offers, because you get a ton of different powers, so every single setup is different. And if you want something that's, it is pretty much a pure dice chucker, but you do have some good choices to make here, and you have that, that big buffet of options on how you want to approach the game. So that is Favour of the Pharaoh by Tom Lehman. At number 8, I have Sweetlandia, which is another simple filler game, all with the idea of trying to collect sets of cards to score as many points as you can over 3 rounds. And all you're going to do on your turn is you're going to select one of these cards that are basically predetermined bids that you have, ranging in different numbers. Highest bids are going to give you first draft when it comes to drafting the cards that you want. And of course, lower ones are not going to give you that priority, but they can actually give you bonus points. So sometimes it's good just to sit back and think, I'm not so bothered about these cards here. Let's play a low card and get those extra few points in my pocket. But as I said, you're going to collect these cards, and these cards are going to have different powers or abilities on them. They're going to give you different kind of scoring synergies. And so you're going to play 3 rounds of that, and the person with the most points at the end of the game is going to be the winner. But I love the way that some of these cards have this everlasting ability on them, so they're permanently in your tableau of cards, so that you can constantly, keep increasing or compounding on your previous scores to give you those extra points. And it's just a very simple game that flows very nicely. It feels something like a game like For Sale, but maybe even a little bit simpler than that. But I do like the pure variety of cards that you have here. Sometimes you see cards that you haven't seen before, so every game does feel kind of different. And I also love these restrictions of these public and private objectives that you have, because there's always going to be 2 public objectives, which might say things such as, have no yellow cards at the end of the round, or have at least 3 blue cards. And because everybody is competing over those, then again, that adds that extra attention to get the cards that you want. But additionally, you also have a private objective, which could kind of conflict with those public objectives. So you need to decide which ones you want to go for, and maybe even adjust your strategy as the round progresses, because you're limited, your options might be completely limited and you cannot achieve everything. So I really like this one. There's really not anything I can criticize about it. It's just a pleasant experience that every single time I've played, I've ended up feeling satisfied and just enjoying it in general. So that is Sweetlandia. At number 7, I have Rustling Leaves, which is a roll and write style game. However, this game uses dice in a way that I haven't seen before. So as you'd expect, at the start of the game, you're going to get a player sheet, and that player sheet is going to have a bunch of different symbols on it in this big grid, essentially. And all these different symbols are going to score in different ways. But the way the game works is really interesting. As you roll this pair of dice, and this dice, I think it values up to 1 up to value 4. And basically all you're going to do is you're going to square off a bunch of those symbols on that grid equal to the dice value. So if you roll, say, a 3 and a 4, you have to draw a 3x4 grid on your sheet and then tick off one of those symbols, or one type of those symbols, within that box that you've just drawn. And then you're trying to score as optimally as you can. These symbols might be as simple as score a point for each tree you tick off, or it might be score 5 points for each pair of birds you tick off, or it might even be things such as don't box in these type of animals. So there's a ton of different variety here, and the game also comes with 4 different booklets that score in different ways, each representing a different season. So a very fast game, and one that's just, again, very pleasant to play, not too thinky, but thinky enough. And I just enjoy this one every single time I play it. And it's been a kind of a regular thing that I pull off the shelf and get played so often, because it does only take 15 to 20 minutes to play. And when you get to the end of a game session and you're a bit, your brain's a bit fried, this is the perfect game for that. So a kind of a quintessential filler, really, that's definitely cemented itself into my collection. At number 6, I have Alice's Garden, which is a pretty straightforward polyomino puzzle style game as you're trying to fill up your sheet of these polyomino tiles. However, within those polyomino tiles, you've got a bunch of different symbology, all of which again score in different ways. So essentially what you're trying to do is you're trying to get these like chess pieces on this strip of chessboard on your player sheet. You're trying to get these mushrooms in columns, you're trying to get these trees in rows, but trying to keep them as far apart as possible because you're going to get more points for doing so. You're trying to get these cards next to each other because each time you do that, you're going to get this, individual square that you can be really flexible with and fill in gaps in your sheet, because if you have gaps, it's going to mean negative points. And to be honest, generally speaking, polyomino games are something I kind of stay away from because I'm a bit bored of them, really. But this one somehow managed to bypass that. It managed to really impress me because it is so breezy. It's fun. Again, that puzzle within the puzzle is so enjoyable to try and map out. And the drafting system is, again, quite enjoyable because each round, people are going to choose the polyomino shape that they want to place on their board, which means that every other player also has to place that shape. However, the game immediately ends as soon as somebody cannot place that shape on their board. So sometimes you have to look at other players' boards and think, you know what, everybody can place this shape, so therefore I will choose this one because, I'm not ready to end the game yet because I don't think I'm winning. That kind of thought process comes into the game. And another game that takes about 20 minutes to play, engaging from start to finish, and just a really solid filler that massively impressed me. At number 5, I have First Rat, which might be one of the most deceiving games that I've ever played, because on the face of it, this game looks like a kid's game. It looks, nice and fluffy and silly, really. And it is those things, however, there is much more meat on the bones than first meets the eye with this game. So essentially the kind of premise of this game is that we are this bunch of rats and we are trying to build this spaceship to go to the moon because we think it's made of cheese. So quite a cute and charming little theme there. But there is some game here, as you are essentially trying to move all your rats of a certain colour up this track. As you're stopping on these different spots along the way, you're collecting resources. These resources allow you to share spaces with other people. They also let you buy unique abilities when you reach these certain checkpoints. And you're also trying to climb another track, which will kind of increase your yield of resources when you land on certain spots up to that point. I love how powerful these abilities that you can get are, because some of them might let you, move a lot faster. Some of them mean you might not have to pay cheese if you share a spot with somebody else. Some of them let you use the tunnels for free and little shortcuts. And all of these things are so inviting. There's a bunch of different strategies you can go down, and it's one of those games where if you do things first, you get compensated, more than if you go there later. So it's a race to do all the different things before anybody else does, so you get that bigger chunk of points. But you can really specialise in a certain field as well. And it's just, again, a bunch of options. There's always something good you can do. Very simple mechanically, but there's a ton of things you need to think about. And again, everything just feels fun. And it takes about 45 minutes to play. And if you want that game that bridges that gap between, being inviting and almost gateway level, but still having more here, then that will keep you coming back to it, I suppose, is what I'm trying to say. So it's maybe not the perfect game for brand new gamers, but as a next level kind of gateway plus game, this game just really does fit that niche perfectly. At number 4, I have Akropolis. Now this light tile placement game really did come out of nowhere for me. Wasn't sure what to expect, but you know what, this game is rock solid. And it's almost like a hybrid of a bunch of tile placement games that I already love. So this is a game where you're building a city, but not only are you spanning out this city, you're also building vertically by placing tiles on top of existing tiles, not only to increase your multipliers when it comes to scoring, but also to get stone, because when you lay on top of these quarries, you get stone, which means you get more flexibility in drafting the tiles that you want. And all these different kind of coloured segments on these tiles are going to score in different ways, such as, if you want these temples, you want them surrounded by a bunch of other tiles so they're completely, landlocked. Or you want these kind of barracks on the outskirts of the board where they have at least one edge exposed. Or you're trying to get these shops in isolation, or you're trying to get these residential areas all together. So again, you've got that kind of spatial puzzle there. But the scoring system works a lot like King Domino, if you're familiar with that game, where you have to try and collect these multipliers, otherwise you're not going to score anything. And there really is that tension of trying to grab the tiles that you want to get those bigger outputs when it comes to the scoring phase. This game really is like a mishmash of a bunch of my favourite tile placement games, such as Miyabi, where you have that vertical aspect. Same goes with Akropolis, and also again King Domino, which we've already talked about. But yeah, this game just really manages to harmonise a bunch of these things together, plays in about 25 minutes. Just a really good puzzle, and there's even 2 different levels you can play this game with. You can do the basic mode, which I kind of explained, or you can do the advanced mode, which places even more restrictions to make it even more difficult to make those different criteria score. But really breezy game, ultra fast turns, and it's just been a massive pleasant surprise for me that I'm just really enjoying playing. So that is Akropolis. At number 3, I have Garum, which might not look like much because the box cover and the artwork and graphic design might look a bit beige and boring to a lot of people. However, the gameplay here is fantastic, as this is essentially like an abstract tile placement game. As each round you are going to draw this tile, which will say, in this round you're playing in this particular segment on this big grid, which is the main board. And what you're going to do is, with this hand of tiles that you have, you're going to place your tile within that segment within the grid, and within that tile you're going to have another grid which is going to consist of logos of your colour, but also all the other players as well. And what you're trying to do is you're trying to build up either rows or columns consisting of your colour, and after you've placed your tile you have the option to place a meeple aligning with that row or column, with the aim of scoring more points at the end of the game. So the more colours of your type you have in that row or column, the more points you're going to get. However, if you don't reach a certain threshold, you're going to score negative points. So it almost has that push your luck mechanism as well. So you can kind of secure your spot early and risk people sabotaging it, or you can wait a bit longer until you've definitely got a good amount in that row or column and then place your meeple to secure those points. But if you do that, you're going to risk losing that row or column to another player because they might claim it before you do. So some really cool decisions there. And I just love that interaction, because no matter what you do, not only are you helping yourself, you're probably going to help somebody else. So you've got to think like, this way helps me, but it's going to help this person more. Maybe I don't want to place it there and I'll use that tile a bit later down the road. But so simple, as simple as it gets mechanically, but again, the decisions are there. It feels quite unlike anything else out there, and the rules on its surface are very dry, but the gameplay is satisfying. I've never had a bad game of this. I've always had people leaving the game thinking, you know what, that is way better than I thought it was going to be. At number 2, I have Dokmus. Now, Dokmus is a route building style game, much in the vein of the Reiner Knizia classics, such as Blue Lagoon or Through the Desert. And in this game, you're trying to expand your route out, trying to get next to these temples, and these temples are going to score you points at the end of the game. The difference between this game and those others I've mentioned, though, is the fact that the board, the main board that you're playing on, is modular. So it consists of these, I believe it's 9 different tiles, which are, again, these different segments. But before you even get to expand your route, you're going to draft this kind of god ability, I suppose. And that ability is going to allow you to manipulate the board to your favour. So you can slide these tiles along, either vertically or horizontally. You can rotate them, all that kind of thing. So what you're trying to do is basically trying to move these temples closer to you, so that when you expand out, you don't have to expand too far. But of course, as the game goes on, everybody is messing with this board, meaning that your pieces are constantly getting shifted around and getting kind of separated, I suppose, giving you more spawning points to move from. So that's pretty much what the game consists of. So it's very abstract, quite puzzly, but it just works for what it is. And I was expecting this to be subpar to those Knizia games, but I think it is definitely as strong as those, and that extra dimension of that draft and again that modular board just take this to a different dimension. So really enjoy this one. Very pure in the way it plays, and definitely a hidden gem and a massive pleasant surprise for me. So that is Dokmus at number 2. And finally, at number 1, I have Ys, which is a Euro strategy game. And it's a bidding and area majority set collection style game. So you've got quite a lot going on here. However, the gameplay is very streamlined. And I actually bought this game as part of a job lot. So I bought a collection of games because there was some in there that I really wanted, and Ys just so happened to be in that collection. I thought, you know what, let's give it a go. It probably won't be much. Let's get it played, tick a box, and move it on. However, when we started playing the game, we all just kind of stopped and looked at each other and thought, is it just me, or is this game absolutely fantastic? And I still feel that way now. So in this game, you have a bunch of these different cylinders ranging from value 0 all the way up to value 8. And you're going to use these cylinders to blind bid. You're going to put them face down so nobody knows what you're bidding on the board. And this board is divided up into quarters. And you're trying to control these different quarters, because if you do, you're going to get these gems of different colours, and those gems are going to score you points in, at the end of the game. It's going to be the main way you score points. However, each of those quarters is going to get divided further into 3 segments, and if you control the segments within those quarters, then you're going to get another bonus, such as collecting a different type of gem, which will score you points on a sliding scale, so you want to collect as many of those as you can. Or they can even give you things such as unique powers that you can use at any time throughout the game. So there's so many different things and different fronts that you're competing on, and on top of that, you have a kind of a commodity speculation style of the game, where you can bid on another part of the board, meaning that you're not bidding on collecting the gems in the first place, but this segment will kind of manipulate the value of those gems. So say you've collected a bunch of blue gems and you need them to be worth the most, you can bid on another section to basically move up the value of those blue gems to try and make it the hottest commodity. So I love that. I generally like commodity speculation games, and this one might just be one of my favourite examples of that. There's so many different things you have to compete in. You have to bid for turn order, and all of which has a sacrifice to it. Because if you're bidding here, it means you're going to lower your bid somewhere else. But you can use those, valued 0 cylinders as a bluffing tool to try and, almost deter people from competing with you. So yeah, really like the way this game works. It sounds more complicated than it is. Criminally underrated. Nobody talks about this game anymore. Might be because it does look a bit beige, a bit boring, I suppose, to the naked eye. But the gameplay here is absolutely fascinating, so much fun, and one of my favourite games actually. So there we have it. Those are my top 10 pleasant surprises. Hopefully you've enjoyed this video. If you have, please be sure to hit like and subscribe to my channel and check out my other content too. I'd also love to hear what games have been pleasant surprises for you, so please be sure to leave a comment below. But for everybody else, I'll see you next time on Chairman of the Board. Bye bye.